and whatever their situation. Now it's like options are back available. I think there's going to be continued shakeup in the industry in general. I've seen it with one person in my company already that I didn't expect.
That was a big topic of the conversation at EDPA Engage last week in Atlanta. I think a couple of the headlines on that topic were people had heard and were expecting lots of companies to go out of business, but that didn't happen as often as people had expressed. There were a few mergers and a few people certainly closed their doors, but not to the extent that everybody thought that would be. It was interesting. If it's okay, Tom, let me just share a couple of the headlines that from that meeting.
Yeah. Sure.
First of all, they had expected about 50 people to attend the conference, and there were a little over 100. So that was an excellent sign right off the bat that we were all hungry to jump back in the pool and see each other. I think it was everybody, for the vast majority of people there, it was their first business trip in over a year. And there was a lot of smiles, and you had to sign a piece of paper when you got there at the registration desk that said, if I've been vaccinated, I don't have to wear a mask, but if I've not been double vaccinated, I promise I'll wear a mask. Not a single mask was seen in that entire meeting during the entire 2 days. I'll let you draw your own conclusions from that. So if our industry is doing that, I can imagine show floors are going to be a similar situation. And when you ran into someone you knew, you weren't supposed to, it said, please refrain from shaking hands, which is pretty funny because they did, but they were hugging each other. And so the proximity was, didn't seem to bother anybody in that room. And last, when you spoke to somebody, they seemed to be sharing things are great. Sales are back. I'm rehiring people. Everything is robust. But when you talked individually to people and pull aside, yeah, I hired a couple people back. Yes, I've got a lot of quotes out. Yes, I closed a sale. So I took that to mean people want there to be tons of traction. There isn't yet, but there's certainly more action today than there was last week. And people are seeing a light. It's just not coming at us full speed just yet. So people talked rosy, but it seemed like, yes, things are better. They're just not consistently better just yet. And I'll go a little bit too far here. We see, Tom and I are fortunate in that Classic shares with us daily deposits. We kind of see what goes in the bank on a daily basis. And look, sometimes we've gotten 6-figure deposits on a Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, it's $700. Now, it's fortunately, it's also picking up, but it's a headline to me that says there's more activity today than there's been, and it's picking up. And I think what's happening with us is the same what's happening with everybody. So it was a positive. It was good to see everybody. It was a day filled of stat and statistic sharing of how many shows were closed, how many are coming back, where people are concerned, what are the trends. And if we keep our fingers crossed, and Mel allows me, I'll put together a little sheet for you guys and kind of share those headlines that I picked up last week with you.
Thanks, Harold. I know sure. Lori, you were there. Dan, you were there. Brad, attend Engage? Nope.
No, I wasn't there. I was out of town.
Before we get to the topics at hand, we'll talk about, Lori, anything to add on to what Harold just talked about at Engage?
No, I think Harold did a great job. Like he said, it was great to see everyone, a lot of hugs. But there were a lot of stats. I think the one takeaway that some of the stats that they shared was things are definitely better. I think they went from March to May in some of the statistics in our industry, and they're definitely trending upwards as far as positivity. People are going to events. I did speak with a client yesterday about Vision East, and just to kind of share that, which usually it's a huge show, but they were very pleased with the attendance, meaning it was 6,000 to 7,000, but in New York, they thought that was pretty good. and they were very qualified attendees too. So I just thought I would share that so you can share it with your customers as you see fit, because I know our clients are asking us that every day. What are you seeing at the shows and things of that nature?
Thanks, Lori. How about you, Dan?
It was good to be with everyone. I agree with the comments that Harold made in regard to overall the sentiment is good. I mean, same in our case. I have the team here today, but not every day. As things are beginning to pick up, we're doing rotating schedules, and I had a lot of discussions with many folks about that. Overall, the vibe and the spirit was good. It was saying, okay, we're here, and we're past the worst because we're seeing the activity on a continued basis. And I mean, I saw more activity almost on the day of the conference than I had on any other day prior. It continues to pick up every day in terms of the activity that we're seeing on our end. So folks are getting ready. And then I was with the group that went out kind of afterward, and we went downtown to pour and close the place down, 24 of us or so, which was, something I hadn't done obviously in a year plus, and it was just good to be out and just have side conversations and just relax and get back to being face to face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That side.
And just as a footnote, I did give Dan a hug. Just saying.
All right. On
right.
that,
and he shared his chocolate bars with me, because it was a lot of stats. And some of the, you get the sentiment from the presentations. There was a mix of presenters. Some of them had information we knew was more just a recap. The information from exhibitor was fantastic. That was, I felt, the best presentation of the whole format. Lots of statistics. And then as we listened to the speakers from various companies on the marketing end, things are certainly going to be different going forward, but I think there's going to be more of a precedent of getting back to normal, much like happened here. I think folks are just ready to get back to normal. And I did a personal trip this weekend out to the Chesapeake Bay, where it's pretty much back in gear as it was. There's virtually no masks anywhere. So I'm seeing that over and over, and that's a rhythm in the Northeast that hasn't happened until maybe the last 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks.
That's great to hear. Hey, Stacy. Yeah. Welcome.
Sorry, I had technical difficulty getting in.
That's okay. We're glad you overcame those difficulties. So let's jump into the topics. The first topic we want to discuss is logistical adjustments. With the cost of materials and shipping continually fluctuating, are you planning on adjusting your quote machine? And that could be putting time limits on quotes, adding any surcharges or any just nuances you're adding to your quotes when dealing with clients. Anybody want to jump in on that?
I can. Can you hear me?
Sure.
So I have estimates I'm doing for November, which, as we know, could totally change. So I put a 30-day limit because obviously Classic is putting a 30-day limit. And then I'm padding the quotes for freight. I go, this is a ballpark. In November could be totally different. Don't know what it's going to look like. But I put as much as, on the quote I did, I put $1,000 extra on the freight just to be safe. I'm like, I'd rather be under later and think it's going to be way too high than tell them it's double when we ship it. So I have been saying 30-day limit. So the clients are like, hey, I want to lock it in at the end of the month instead. So they want to secure it to lock in. I guess it's helping me somewhat, but I am being a lot of disclaimers, let's just say. Did that answer the question?
When you do, have you had any pushback on it saying, I need a firm estimate now that's good in November? Have you any of your clients, push back on the 30-day? time limit?
No, the client I deal with is an agency. And I told her based on the materials, I said, right now, wood costs are up 67% and climbing. Extrusions are up too. So I said, if we secure it now, because it's a rental, then at least Classic can secure it and build it, and it'll be locked in at the price. And they're willing to do that ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I just don't know some of the other ancillary, could the labor costs differ slightly? It's based on time and materials, and it's going to take people longer if they got new labor people. So they quoted me 2 men, 8 hours. I quoted it 3 men, 8 hours just to be safe. So I am building in cushion everywhere just to be safe.
That's an interesting point you bring up about labor, because we've all been fixated on freight costs and material costs, but labor could be a wild card as well. And yeah, you're right. I think that's probably prudent of you to add a little fluff into that too.
Here, Tom, I'm going to throw my 3 cents again from Atlanta. So everybody was talking about labor and the potential concerns once we do get show bookings and having enough people having the right industry knowledge on the floor. And so I found myself, I didn't do much happy houring with anybody, but the one afternoon I was there, I found one of the city leads for labor company X, and I was just one-on-one with them, and I said to him, what's your biggest headache right now, short or long term? And he didn't miss a beat. He started answering before I even finished asking the question. He said, it's people in the industry saying how we're not ready or prepared for what's coming, and that's just not close to truth. So I peeled a few layers back, and he seemed to be strongly believing what he was saying. And I said, you've got a PR issue with your industry. You need to find a way to somehow share what you just told me, with a beer in my hand with the industry, so that people aren't freaking out, or at least, self-fulfilling prophecy. Anyway, I just thought I'd share that. Some of the labor guys don't think they have a problem, but everybody else does. So it's coming. We'll see.
Hey, Steve Gable, what is it from your perspective that you're seeing on the quoting? How are you handling that? Oh, you're muted, Steve.
We're just quoting regularly, and with the assumption that we're going to have delays and urging people to make a decision. And we're not, we've not ramped up. I mean, we've done probably 8 or 10 quotes in the last 2 weeks, which is, 100% better than it was. I mean, we feel like the sentiment that you guys have described it's coming back cautiously for some of because they're not even back to their offices yet, but it's coming. We feel good about it. I mean, labor, I'm glad Harold chimed in about the labor. That was a worry, lack of people. If you have 10 guys to do 20 jobs and your job happens to happen at 6 o'clock in the evening, now you're at double time or whatever. And they're not going to make it. They're not going to say, well, that's our problem, not your, So that's good to hear. Just hope it was one of the major labor companies.
Go ahead, Brad.
I was just going to comment that I'm pretty good friends with the CEO and the VP of sales of our labor firm, and they are talking a different story than what you heard, Harold, in that it is going to be challenging. They've lost some of their city managers. A lot of those workers had transferable skills over into commercial construction. So you might have just run into a glass is more than half full kind of guy or girl. And I do think it's going to be an issue as we begin to return that's still going to be there.
Go ahead,
Max
Max.
has his hand up.
Brad, I've heard kind of the same thing from a couple of labor companies. They had thinned out to the fewest that they could possibly maintain for a while, and now trying to get those people back. That's one of the difficult things, is that even if they're promising them, 80 hours on the floor, it's not consistent yet, and it's going to be a while before it's consistent. And so, they're having issues trying to decide if they're going to, perhaps they're working at a supermarket and a deli counter and they've got full benefits. They're not going to sacrifice that for a short-term game unless they know that there's something further down the road. So, I personally know a number of people that have left the industry for that very reason. And, I don't think that the exhibitors understand that or realize that as a problem. I have encouraged people to sign their contracts earlier than later for that reason, to make sure that I can handpick the people that I want on the floor and reserve them. But the other factor that's going into this is that all those shows got pushed back. And so even during a normal labor year, when we would have lost a substantial amount of people, it's really going to be just kind of, it's going to be a backlog, especially in October, November, December. And it's, I don't know if this is true or not, but somebody speculated that GES might not even have advanced warehousing because they wouldn't have enough people to staff it, and you're going to have to ship direct to show. So, I don't want to be a Chicken Little about it, and it's a problem I'd much rather have than not having to worry about it at all. But I definitely think that I'm going to keep my pulse on, all the labor companies that I'm aware of, just to try to see where they're at as they try to ramp back up.
No, that makes sense. How about you, Lori?
I would agree with what Brad and Max just said. That's what our labor teams are telling us too, that it is going to be an issue in some of the cities, and as well as things just backing up. When you said something about GES, I do have a question, and I cannot remember the show, but someone in passing at EDPA said that they had a client that was going to a show that GES was running, and GES was mandating that they had to use the exhibit rentals from GES.
ICSC.
Is that always been that way, or is that something new?
That actually was a fairly robust show for a long time with some very big players in it. And the story that's being told is that GES is doing this as a benefit to the association, to try to curb costs so that people can still participate. I have kind of mixed emotions about that, because I think that if I remember correctly, I think you're reduced to even a 10 by 20 or a 10 by 10, and GES is running the entire show, and they're not even taking outside contractors. It was kind of a scary thought for me in a number of, I don't know.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail. It's just, that's a concerning issue for us as well. So
good one.
I heard a further explanation of that was that because they were worried that they weren't going to have enough labor to run the show normally, they were recommending that they provide all the exhibits so that they could guarantee delivery for every exhibitor that wanted a booth. And ICSC isn't the only show that they're not the only general contractor show with a general contractor that is proposing only exhibits by the general contractor. So Max may have mixed feelings. I don't have mixed feelings at all. I think it needs to be stamped out as quickly as possible.
I was trying to be polite, but yes, I'm 100% with you. This kind of set me into a tailspin when Freeman bought a ton of B Matrix panels about 2 years ago, that they might try doing the same type of a situation. And so, to be quite frank, I think that's a monopoly, and it's an antitrust issue.
Yeah.
Well, they also bought E4 Design here in Atlanta, Lance Wachholtz's company, which is now E4, a Freeman company, mainly so they could learn how to design and use B Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
And that is scary.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, it's a threat.
Well, and I can see them very easily trying to become the Amazon of the world, where they control everything. And You know, I don't know what percentage between GES and Freeman they have across the United States, but I'm going to guess it's what, 70% of the shows, if not more.
Consolidation did not help us many years ago.
Mm-mm.
All right, so, speaking of cost issues, someone told me yesterday, and I can't remember exactly who the source was, but that GES on future shows will be requiring all EACs pay a $300 fee to register to get onto the floor. Has anybody else heard that? I'm hoping I wasn't dreaming it. I don't think so. I don't dream that well. So, and I never can remember my dreams anyway. But regardless, I'll get more information, and I'll send everybody else some information out once I pin that down. But I mean, it's even gotten to a point where the same person told me that when EACs provide certificates of insurance, they'll get charged for submitting the certificates of insurance. So it's just getting ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Now that's not $300 per person from the floor. That would be just per EAC and their crew. Let me see. Don, you haven't chimed in yet on how you're handling the cost fluctuations and the uncertainties. What's it like for you?
Well, it's very similar to what Stacy had said, and what we do is we definitely highlight the 30-day, and sometimes we've gone 2 weeks. Earlier in the year, in April, we actually did a 14-day, and we may stick with it, not because of the fluctuations, which are still there, but it also puts a sense of urgency on our customer, and they run it up the flagpole a lot quicker to get approval from their finance arm. And so that was an unintended benefit of putting that, and not only in the email that the quote went into, but within the quote, buried within the quote also, we put sub notes to say this is valid for 14 days, and we actually specify the date that we're going to have to re-quote this, because supplies are just if I mean, we've been able to get everything, but our purchasing manager has to go hunt them and go find them. He's not just calling up his normal cast of characters and getting the stuff. He actually has to make additional phone calls, so it's taking longer to find the materials. But we are getting the materials. Also, on the flip side, is just to get to the quoting. If, let's say, we send a quote off to a vendor, and since the vendors are getting more quotes in right now of people worried about November, we're finding it's longer to get the quote as well. Where before, I'll say Classic was able, hey, we'll have it back to you in, say, a few hours a day or two. Now it's a little bit longer, so we also have to coach the customer that, yeah, we'll get it back to you not tomorrow or the next day, but we'll get it to you in 5 days. And it's just, we explain what's going on, and we have an excellent customer base. So that 14 days we found out to be like I said, unintended benefits. But once we put the quote out there, we stick by it for the 14 days. Now in logistics, on services, we do actuals. I like the idea of padding that so you can come in under on the logistics side, because we did have a shipment to Florida for a show for MRO Americas, and shipping came in a lot more expensive from Kansas City to Florida than we expected. I mean, from what we expected to be, let's say 5,000 round trip, was 8,000 round trip. So yes, and that was mild reaction from our customer as well, Stacy. They were not happy with that. So, but it's estimates, and we tell them that it's very clear on the invoices on the estimates.
Yeah, that really takes a lot of selling skills to sell those up charges like that.
After the fact, yes, after the fact it does.
Yeah.
I try to explain it to my customers and have everybody else use the same methodology, that you're betting a futures market, and the market has been fluctuating in a number of ways for a number of reasons. Inflation is up overall across the United States, and so it's almost unfair to ask me to commit to something where I don't know what's going to happen, 30 days from now, let alone 6 months from now. And most of the time people understand that. I mean, and I have been doing the same thing. I have been shooting high and aiming low in terms of, budgeting. I would much rather prefer that I rebate the money and they feel like they're over budget initially than to find out after the fact. But it's a guessing game, and as long as you explain that to them, I think that they have to understand that too. If they can tell me what the price of gas is going to be from 2 weeks from now, it's equally fair for me to say I can't tell you what the cost of my shipping is going to be.
If you're all right, Max, I'll use that futures market line the next customer I quote.
You're more than welcome to.
Thanks.
I do have another question too, Josh, and I'm not as in touch with as many people in logistics as I used to be. I know that there's a driver shortage even when it comes to petroleum products these days. And so it really concerns me about what's going to happen to direct to show carriers, because I have to think in terms of volume. When people are trying to get shipping containers into the country from China right now, and they're paying a $5,000 per container premium just to get them here, offloading them and shipping things around the United States has become equally more expensive. Has anybody talked to anybody in any of the logistics companies that has a concern for finding people to drive?
My husband, imports from China, and right now there's an outbreak again. So the containers are stuck and they have to go through Hong Kong, which means more money, longer delays. So that's happening right now too.
I'm not down in the trenches of the show services estimating here at the company, but I have been in meetings where our director of client services has voiced concerns about that we had a driver shortage prior to the pandemic, and now we've got that problem exacerbated by higher fuel prices. Yeah, the cost of show services I don't think are going to be very pretty until something's stabilized.
Yeah, my fear is that we end up having to use common carriers, or depending on what the volume is in, like, say, October.
Common carriers and airbags around our crates.
Exactly. Yeah. And pray to God that there aren't 15 refrigerators, parked in front of our 10x10 at the end of the truck.
Yeah, there is a risk, as Brad said, there's been an ongoing driver shortage. And it's exasperated now by a couple of things that it's, the trucking industry has experienced the same thing we've experienced. We can be an older workforce, and a lot of people are leaving, and driving a truck is not a glamorous job. And so they're having difficulty finding younger people come into the industry, and it's a battle. So I think, if you can, what normally would be a 5-day transit time, you may well count it as a 10-day travel time, transit time. It's that severe, and the potential is, especially when, to Max, to your point, going directly to show site. You can't afford to get a driver there too early. You can't afford to have them there late and miss a targeted move-in. So it's really you're rolling the dice, and it's hard to predict. Very, very hard to predict. I will say I've been reading on the when we're talking about futures, the cost of wood is anticipated to come down this fall just because the producers have increased production. And that's going to help, and they're anticipating tariff relief by that time as well. So I think we should see some relief in the fall, which is good news.
It's actually already starting to come down. The last month it's started to come down from the high in May. So
yeah, plywood has come down quite a bit. Go ahead, Brad.
I was just going to say, as a custom exhibit builder, we've been talking about the material costs, and what my director of operations has been telling me is that, as we know, the building type materials, 2x4s and BC plywood that we use to build crates, is 3 to 4 times what it used to cost. And that is significantly increasing the cost of building crates, maybe 30% overall. However, on building, custom exhibits, we use a lot of 3/4 birch. That was $45 a sheet, and it's now like 54, maybe 55. So although it's a significant increase, the overall cost to the exhibit, we think is kind of maybe more in the 10% range. And of course, aluminum, raw materials, extrusions, is affecting us, and of course, classic, since you use so much aluminum as it is. So it's definitely having an impact. My fear is that with all the show services, everything from drayage, freight, labor, and everything else going up significantly, if that's indeed what's going to happen, our clients' budgets aren't increasing. So all it's going to do is take money out of our pocket. And meanwhile, we go to them with price increases on our own. So at the end of the day, if they're not spending more, as all these costs are being transferred on, they're getting a lot less. So, and then they're going to be unhappy about that. So, I've said for a long time now that, recovering from the pandemic maybe harder than having just survived it for the last 15 months. It's a different set of challenges that we have now,
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, let's move on to the second topic, and that's restarting the machine. As we do get busier, how are you working out the kinks, blowing off the dust, greasing the gears of your business? I know before I'll throw this out. I've talked to a lot of people who have said, "Wow, now that I'm busier again, I've got to retrain myself to go through, all the steps that I would almost instinctively do 14 months ago to retrain myself to get back into the swing of things." So what is everybody else seeing on that? Go ahead, Dan.
I'm seeing that from a staff perspective. I have everybody coming in to the physical office 2 days a week, so they're all here on the same 2 days, and then they work from home another 2 days, as most of them are 3 to 4 right now in terms of schedule. And some of the most basic things that I thought they had down is we've been able to bring back the majority of our staff, and they just have forgotten a lot of stuff in process, and even when the process is mapped out and listed, it's like, well, remember, this process was written and you were part of that. Let's go back to that, go through the steps and kind of get them on gear to ramp back in. But I'm seeing that effect where they're super happy to be back in action. It's definitely a stuttered start. It comes in waves and goes. And even speaking to the last question, since I didn't really say a whole lot, we have a client that has a 400 square footer for a show in October. They've rented in the past. They want a whole new booth, and they want every specific price of what this new booth is, even though they don't exactly know what they want. And then on top of it, it's two companies jointly going together independently, but they come together in one 400 square foot booth, and they only do that together for one show a year. So it makes it really interesting, as they have slightly different objectives. And then they want every specific, and not to mention, when you don't know what it is, you can't give the specifics, but this makes it even harder. So I've gone everything in 15 to 20% higher than I think it's going to be, just from an estimating perspective. And we've set up a quoting module for other projects, because my team is running through that as the project managers or in some cases our designers. Some of them spec out certain projects from the budget, and then they get it ultimately approved, but they're using this calculator with those multipliers in place simply to cover what we don't know, because everyone's asking, they want to know something specific. Well, what's this going to be in August? I don't even know. I think, Max, you said that right. I like the futures concept. We just have to give them, okay, this is what we believe it's going to be from a not to exceed. And yes, that number may shock. The biggest challenge is, and Brad said it, is everything increases slightly, it makes the nut significantly much more difficult to digest. And I have a call tomorrow with 6 different parties on an opportunity, and I already know that it's 30 to 40% over what they have in their heads. And half of that's coming from the projected increases.
I have to say I've gone through a couple. Thankfully, I've got some work in right now, but I've gone through a couple design meetings and some RFPs lately, where you and I and everyone in this room all discuss those types of things, and we monitor them on a daily basis. A lot of trade show managers are not paying attention to that. I mean, they see inflation going up to 2.5%, and more, as well as everything else for that matter, but they're not factoring it in. They're not taking that into consideration. And so you're absolutely right, Dan. The expectation is there, but the budget is not there to match. And several times I've had to say just very politely, times have changed, since the last time you probably went through this process 2, 3, 4 years ago. And for what your expectations are, I don't think that I can do an adequate job of satisfying you and coming up with something, the next Picasso, without some adjustments. So is it something that you can go back to the table and discuss again? And I'm sure that there are other people out there that will desperately attempt to try, but in all earnest, I don't think that anyone is in the situation where we can kind of reverse schedules and budgets and give you what you had 2, 3 years ago with this at the same service level.
Hey, Brad, you were pretty adamant, I believe at our last meeting, about bringing people back into the office because you felt like that was the best way to work, get the teams together. It makes it more efficient. So as you're bringing people back into the office, how are you or your managers working to blow the dust off and get everybody back acclimated and in the swing of things?
Well, Stacy caused me to change my mind on that. So, so what we did is we have mowed down all of our offices and its additional shop, and everybody that isn't a shop worker is just going to work from home. No, I'm kidding. They haven't been coming back yet, and I really think this is going to be a lot like a hibernating bear trying to wake up and get out of the den. And right now, the design, estimating, project management, who is doing a lot of the estimating, they are screaming right now with the amount of work that they've got going, like they haven't seen, since obviously pre-pandemic. And they are rusty and they're out of shape. And, one of the things that we did was, over the last year, we went back and either wrote or rewrote our operations manual in every department. It gave us an opportunity to sit down and really analyze how we do things, how we're supposed to do things, how we can standardize things. And as we grow and add new people, have consistency in how they're trained and how they perform. So that's been useful. And then in the last few weeks, my client services manager has a program that he's been doing, which is a scrape off the rust program. And I think it's where they're just doing like we're doing right now and getting together as a group and talking and reviewing procedures and talking about how things have changed and that kind of thing. At this point, you've got, some employees that were staying at home and their kids were, virtual, and they had to stay home. Well, now, I'm looking at the time periods as being beginning of the year to Memorial Day to Labor Day, and Labor Day and beyond. We are still, trying to minimize our cash burn and, keep ourselves from digging a deeper hole. We're still utilizing unemployment, but here in Georgia, that's about to go away because we're in one of the red states that the governor wants to just pull the plug on all that because everybody ought to go back to work, irrespective if you're in the restaurant industry and have a job to go back to, or the convention business and you don't. And so it's kind of unfortunate in our particular case. I think that a lot of the viewpoint of people coming back to work that I've been hearing is that, hey, my pay is still cut. Gas is $3 a gallon. You want me to drive into work every day and pay all that when I can't make my own bills without having some of them being reduced, like my gas bill. And so I think there's a little bit of the, hey, if you pay me, I'll come back, and we're not quite there yet. So I'm not dropping the hammer on, people coming back. They're coming back in as needed. on that topic, I think I was talking earlier today about how I think a third of the people, they come in and they've been here all along because they don't want to sit at home all the time. There's probably a middle third of the people that are like, all right, when I need to come back, I'll come back. And then there's going to be perhaps a third or some percentage of the people that are going to, want the new deal, work from home all the time, work from home, a significant amount of time, disappointed if it's only 1 day a week. This is a whole new world that we're going to have to face and see. I don't know what the answers are right now. It's going to unfold in front of us, and I think we will adapt as we move along.
So is there anybody out there besides Stacy who is fully staffed and rolling in their office?
We're getting close. It's mercifully, and to your point, Tom, we did do that a little while back. I had everybody go through a dry run a couple times, just pushing jobs back through, partly for my own edification, but because we had rewritten, similar to you, Brad, we had rewritten a couple of our operations procedures over the course of the pandemic, just to make sure that we were being efficient. And so we streamlined it a bit as well, anticipating that we would be onboarding people that were new. And so rather than confuse them and anchor all the veterans that we have with the task of going back and retraining them, we tried to make that as simple as possible. So we did, but yeah, I mean, we were all rusty. I mean, admittedly, I remember the first discovery call I sat through this year, which was back in maybe February, and it was just speculative. And I thought, my God, I've forgotten half the questions I used to ask. I mean, even for me, all those things that were habitual, I had to go back and kind of rethink. I mean, it wasn't second nature anymore. It had been a year since I had ever even, gone through a discovery call. And so, fortunately, I fumbled through it and it all came back to me, but I think everybody's a little rusty. As a matter of fact, we've had some EDPA meetings up here in the Midwest, specifically regarding that. And what it takes to get back into the groove again. This job isn't like riding a bike, as you all well know. So
I will have to say our first first couple of shows that we did, thankfully we went to Advanced Warehouse. It was like we didn't even know what we were doing. It was amazing how much. I mean, we have our checklist, we have our processes, but it's like you can't learn to swim without getting wet. And boy, did we get wet. I mean, it was not, it wasn't smooth. And now we just had a mini process meeting earlier this morning about how to additionally track, because we do have a new project management software that we use Monday.com for show services. Now we did project management. Now we use it for project management and business development as well. And that tied in with our new operating system. We call it our operating system, EOS. I think Amy spoke about it last time she was on, rolling that in. Still, just even though we had all the process, we had the meeting, we had everybody on board, you still had to do it. And we're like, it's not that hard. We've done it. I've been in this industry since 2012. It's not, how could we just forget everything in the last 12 months? Thankfully, World of Concrete went off without a hitch, and we've got a couple more shows coming up in June. So we have the opportunity to exceed our clients' expectations, and we plan on doing that. But it is, on the show services, it's been interesting. On the project management, thankfully our office and our shop is, obviously right side by side, so it's been smoother, but still there's been an, I don't want to say a learning curve, but yeah, oh yeah, I forgot that. And back, Max, what you said about questions, it's like, oh yeah, I forgot to do that. And it's not anything dramatic. It's a difference between, in golf, shooting under shooting a 90 or shooting 100. It's just little things, and everybody wants to break 80, but you got to be at it for a while, and eventually we expect to be breaking 80 here real soon. Hopefully, give us September.
Yeah, we all came out of a career coma, man. Give us a break.
Yes. I'm glad we're not the only one.
Has anybody had any pushback from staff that who are saying, hey, we've always done it this way. Why are you changing or tweaking it? Well, any of those stuck in the old ways type of attitude and not adjusting well.
We forbid those words. We literally say, we do not want to hear those words. This is a whole new ball game. We get to start from scratch. We get to build from the base. Do not say those words. Not allowed. Although it is. So that's how we always did it. No, think new. And in addition, I don't know if Amy shared this, we also had to move locations. So in July of 2020, we moved, which was pretty exceptional. I'll just leave it at that. But we did get the chance to move, and so we're excited about the next 6 months, no question about it.
Well, it would be a good news, bad news situation. You're moving, and that's it's always stressful. But typically, in my experience, when people were moving in our industry, it was always November, December, and the busiest time of the year. And they're trying to move because the leases were up at the end of December, and you're hoping you got half of your clients' properties out on shows, so you're only moving half of the storage material, and people are swamped and they're not excited about moving. So, you did it during the pandemic when there was nothing going on, which is probably smart.
Yeah, I wish it was by design, but no, it wasn't. It was, we'll just take the lucky. Rather be lucky than good.
Yeah. Anybody, anything else on getting the wheels greased and rolling?
We were rusty ourselves. When we first started talking about trade shows and people started calling, and I struggled, not only with the questions but the answers. They would ask me questions. It's like, why are you asking me that? I was stunned that how little or how much I forgot. And our staff is the same way. We're a small, very small company, and we've actually hired 2 people in the last month, new people, which the pandemic was good in getting rid of the old people that you don't need, or bad hires. So that was kind of a blessing. And then we hired 2 new people. And right now we have one of our warehouse people, there's not a lot to do, but we're protecting him because we know that somebody else is going to snatch him up if we don't keep him and keep him busy. So that's a little bit of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Finding work for.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Steve. Lori, did you raise your hand real quick there?
Oh, yeah. I just want something that we did, and we are everyone, at least what we're calling our core team. We're starting to bring some people back right after the 4th. We'll probably be bringing at least 4. I think we're 3 to 4 back. But the core team that we have, we all are in the office. I mean, they've all expressed an opinion that they want to be here, so that's been nice. But something I did last week, and I really enjoyed it, I finally decided I don't want to assume where people's heads are, because we have some that have been here quite some time and some newer. So I had a one-on-one with all of the team members, and it was good. I learned. I just asked, they could ask me questions. I asked them questions, kind of where they're at, how they're feeling about things, and then shared kind of what our plan was. And you do learn things, because I didn't want to assume, where people's heads are now. If they told me everything, I don't know that, but I did learn some things, and we went over processes, because everybody's right. We're all rusty.
Yeah, Max, I feel your pain, because I was talking to a classic distributor yesterday about a rental, and I did make copious notes. I asked a ton of questions, and I called Jim Shellman up, and I was reviewing it with him. He goes, "Well, did you ask this?" And I said, "Oh, no." "You asked this?" "No." And all of a sudden, the balloon deflated. I just went from being proud of myself to being like, "You idiot! The main things I should have asked, I forgot to ask." So it's almost like I got to script it for the next meeting so I remember everything.
Yeah, shooting from the hip came natural. Loading my gun didn't.
Yeah. Good way to put it.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting. I've heard from some of our clients that we have meetings set up with in the next few weeks. They want to discuss, well, what are the current trends at trade shows?
Showing.
Yeah.
The trend has been, well, and several of them said at in-person shows that have been happening through the pandemic. So that many of them don't realize that almost everything hadn't been happening at all in
Well,
person.
I think Dan, the answer is big double-decker booths. I think that's the
right.
answer.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right. Everybody's
I had-
tripled their budget and just had the best time they ever had.
It's
You
a
know,
it's a land grab. Go out there and get it.
That's right.
I had that exact question today. That's funny.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys are experiencing this, but a lot of our clients are asking us all these different scenarios. Like, what if I do this? Or what if I do that? And that just takes time when you have, so we're trying to navigate how do we respond to that, still serve them, but they're wanting 3 different completely scenarios, but yet don't really know what they want. Like, what if I do a 40, 20 by 20, or what if I do a 40 by 40?
And then they want to know all the associated costs with each one of those.
Exactly.
What is it going to be to ship it? We don't even know what we're shipping. And ones that aren't sure when they're going to commit, some of them their shows are in August. So we're pushing rentals. Tom, cover your ears. We're pushing rentals from our own rental stock because I know I can control it.
Exactly.
And not be dependent on, okay, there's a rush as we get into September and everyone wants these rentals. What's going to be available? If you're not ready to make a decision until the beginning of August, man, you're really late because we got to do everything in a blink. And there is going to be I feel like there's going to be a real steep uphill climb for all of us where it's almost like we're looking at a cliff up in like 60 to 90 days. Based on the sporadic sputter that we're seeing now, that really, if you asked us 60 days ago, most of us were maybe just starting to see a slightest flicker, or maybe we weren't even getting the fire starter to spark at that point. So something's going to change there, and doing these dry runs are really good to be running through.
Yeah, I think it's going to come back like a fire hose, and that's what I've shared with the team, in about 30, 60 days, because the sporadic is great, but it's going to be a big push, because where you used to have 6 months maybe to plan a big show, maybe. I mean, our timelines of people aren't making decisions till 3 and 4 months out.
That's a lot of time now, which it isn't.
Yeah.
But that's their perspective, that it's a lot of time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I had that conversation with a client the other day, and they said, "Well, how are shows going?" I said, "Do you ever launch a bent bottle rocket?" I said, "It's going up, but it's anybody's guess as to which direction and how fast." I said, "But it's accelerating." Dan, I think you're absolutely right. We are going to be at the precipice here shortly, and God knows our worst problems to have. Better busy than bored, but we're gonna have a whole new set of challenges here very soon, and so it'll be interesting to see. And I think it's also really nice that we have these opportunities to share that information with each other. It certainly has cut down on my therapy bill. So
misery loves company, right?
Oh, you bet.
Right.
Hey, I hate to cut short, but I got to be on a call. But
Okay.
Thank you. So
Good. Thanks, Stacy.
Thanks.
I have a
Steve.
what are we
question for
doing
those
this
that are
another
still
2
here.
weeks? What's that?
We'll do this again in a month.
Okay. No, my challenges are my clients they quit. So now I got to deal with a new decision maker who has no idea what they did in the past. So now I'm like reinventing the wheel, pulling everything, told them what they bought, what do they own, where is it sitting? So
Yes.
out of that, or going out and get, printing, for me, the person I called before is no longer there. Now I'm like calling the operations person going, okay, tell me who is my new rep if I need a quote. That's been a challenge too. So It's just everybody everywhere is new. So, but best of luck to you guys. I got a call. Hopefully I'm going to sell a booth. So
There you go.
Okay.
I got 3 appointments tomorrow for
Go get 'em.
new booths in a row.
That's
in
awesome.
1 day.
That's good. I wish I had this problem, but hey,
We're all going to have that problem.
exactly. Have a
Right.
great day.
See ya.
You too.
All right, on that note, we're up against our, probably our hour here, so we'll wrap this up. but it was great seeing everyone, and it was really interesting to hear all your feedback, because those are two topics that are we're gonna be faced with, and continuing on through the remainder of the year and probably into 2022. So we will talk to all of you, if not sooner, in a month, and have a great 4th of July holiday. And Max, make sure those bottle rockets aren't being set off anywhere near my house. I'd appreciate that. But
I just have a simple philosophy, the same one I have on the 4th of July, is I do with everything in life: light it and run.
And 4th of July at one time was maybe the slowest week of the year, and we're all thinking about ramping up. Think about that.
Yeah.
Has a whole new meaning.
All right, everyone, take care.
Take care, everybody.
Enjoy your
Goodbye.
day.
Bye,
See you guys.
everyone.
Peace.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.